Hello! In the previous video, it is clear that there are two approaches to teaching grammar, which is teaching grammar deductively and teaching grammar inductively. Teaching grammar deductively means starting from rules and forms. Teaching grammar inductively means focusing on meaning and use before form. You may agree that teaching grammar with inductive methods is a good way for students to understand a grammar point and can help them use the language on their own. In this video, I'm going to talk in a more detailed way about how to teach grammar meaningfully rather than teaching grammar by rules. This video goes in details of how to teach grammar via situations and via task-teach-task method. So, let's first review a bit about what students need to know when learning a grammar point. First, they need to understand meaning with the given context. They need to know the natural pronunciation of the language. They need to know how to form the language, or in other words, how it is constructed. They need to use the language. In order for students to understand meaning of language so that they can use it in the end, it is crucial that context is provided. Using situations to present grammar is one way to put language in context. The context may be a reading, a listening, or should be a situation. Let's look at one example of should. Should as a modal auxiliary has many different meanings depending on the context. So what does should mean? It is difficult for teacher to explain because in isolation the word is meaningless. If it is put in a sentence like, she should exercise more frequently, it is better because now the form is clear. However, the sentence is decontextualized, so the meaning is still limited, as listeners don't know who is speaking, to whom, and why. Now, you may wonder how you can teach grammar with a situation. Well, it's simple. One easy way is to use picture to set a context. Jo, in her video posted on YouTube entitled "A Few Tips on Presenting Grammar," emphasizes the importance of context in language teaching. She gives one understandable example. Let's have a look. She showed the picture of one window like this and set the scene. Now, teachers can use those contextualized sentences to teach about present continuous. Example, she's doing her homework, but she's feeling bored. She's looking out of the window. To get you clearer about using situation to teach grammar, let's follow this sample lesson. This is a lesson about using should to give advice. This is one sample lesson of David Riddle's book entitled "Teaching English as a Foreign Language." The lesson is divided into 3 stages. Stage 1. In this stage, teacher raises student interest about the topic and activates their background knowledge by organizing a class discussion activity about unemployment in a country, how people go about finding work, the stages of applying for a job, leading to tips for a successful interview. Stage 2 is to set a meaningful context and to elicit or teach vocabulary. In order to do this, teacher says she has a friend, Jason, who is going for an interview tomorrow for a job at the bank. Elicit from students how Jason should appear when she goes for the interview. The things like appropriate clothes, shaved, hair combed, etc. Teacher then shows a picture of how Jason typically appears and asks if this would be appropriate for his interview. She highlights his dirty shoes, uncombed hair, unshaven face, and casual clothes. Now comes to stage 3. Teacher elicits short sentences from students or give her own model. At this stage, the primary purpose is to focus on meaning. For students to understand the meaning of should in this situation is to give a friendly advice, instead of inviting, apologizing, or refusing. In order to do this, teacher says that she really wants him to get a job and asks them, "What will I speak to him when I see him?" Then students may provide sentences containing should, or teacher may give a model sentence like, "You should wear a suit." So, the function of giving a friendly advice has been clarified in this context. Alright, one point to remember. When you use situation to teach grammar, remember to personalize the context. In this situation, teacher says that it's her friends. It's also a good idea if teacher can ask students to relate to or have them talk about students' own aspects of life. This way of doing helps students to engage with the language and remember it better. This method can be teacher-controlled, but it can involve full student participation. This method can be especially suitable and effective for low-level students. And here are some further tips. If you are using pictures, make sure that the pictures are clear, simple, and appropriate. Make sure that you check essential vocabulary at the start of the lesson to ensure that students understand the context. Remember to build the context slowly, carefully, and clearly. Teacher's job is to guide students and keep them involved throughout. Try to use different eliciting techniques so that you can maximize their talking time and keep them involved. Checking is important to make sure that they understand. Now you do some practice. For each of the sentences below, I shouldn't have done it. I'm going to France next week. Would you mind helping me? Let's go to a concert. I've worked here for 10 years. Try to work out its function and think of a possible situation that establishes the function. Now, let's do the first one as an example. This sentence, "I shouldn't have done it," may express a regret about things happening in the past. The context can be, a student copies from another student in an exam, tells a friend about it the next day, and expresses regret. Now, pause the video and think about other sentences. Come back when you are ready with your ideas. Alright, here are some suggestions. The sentence, "I'm going to France next week," may have a function of giving information about future schedule. A possible context is two busy friends trying to arrange some time out together. One explains that the next week is impossible. Next, the sentence, "Would you mind helping me?" Its function is a polite request for help. Teacher may set the context like, a student struggling with a math exercise and asks his or her friend to help. Next, the sentence, "Let's go to a concert." The function of this is to make a suggestion. And the context can be, two friends are discussing a night out together, but they don't know where to go and what to do. One looks at a leaflet and makes suggestions. The next sentence, "I've worked here for 10 years." The function can be talking about things happening in the past, continuing into present, and maybe into the future. The situation can be an employee talking to employer requiring a pay raise. This method can be teacher-controlled, but it can involve full student participation. This method can be especially suitable and effective for low-level students, as I said. However, no single method can be effective all the time. No method could be used exclusively, or else it would become predictable and boring. So, in his book, David Reader discusses another way of teaching grammar, which is test, teach, test. This method is more student-centered. Let's see. The first part of the lesson is the first test, but in fact, it is a discovery task to provide teacher with information of how much or how little the students seem to know and what the particular problems are that need to be clarified later. Here are two examples of tests or discovery tasks. In example 1, students do a gap-filling exercise with a, an, or there. In example 2, for lesson focuses on preposition of place and position, like in a corner or on the shelf. Teacher might ask students to describe a picture to their friends and to spot the differences between two pictures. So, as you can see, the first test is not necessarily an exercise. It can also be a communicative activity. Then comes the second stage, teach. If students have completed the first task very well, or if they have performed the task well by using accurate and appropriate language in communication, the teacher's task is less demanding. However, teacher will need to clarify a lot of clarification and further practice if students do not know well about the grammar points. At this stage, teacher has to clarify meaning by asking concept questions, providing more examples, and checking understanding. If the first task is like a discovery task, the second task is really practice. Task 2 could involve more than one activity. It could be one exercise or control practice, and one communicative activity or equal less control practice. Let me end this video with some tips if you decide to use test, teach, test. The first one, if the first test is an accuracy-based exercise, just focus on the aspects of the targeted language to be dealt with in your lesson. Next, monitor the first test carefully to assess precisely student knowledge of subject matter. The tasks for the first test must be appropriate for the level. And finally, teachers should offer a variety of tasks in the second test for further practice. So, you have got to know more about two methods of teaching grammar, which are teaching grammar via situational presentation and teaching grammar via test, teach, test. I hope that you find this video useful and practical.